we invited you here today to inform you that I just finished a conversation with Premier Blaine Higgs. I advised Premier Higgs that the Liberal Party of New Brunswick, its caucus, has rejected his proposal to keep his government in power for the next 2 years. By way of background, you recall that I wrote to the Premier on the 7th of July expressing my concern of having an election during a pandemic. I assured the Premier that the Liberal Party would not be responsible for bringing down his government during 2020. In reality, that agreement, that offer, would have lasted out to March 31st. 34 days later, the Premier responded, asking us to come to the Chancery Building for meetings over a 2.5-day period to review his proposals and to strike an agreement that would have given his minority government majority power without an official opposition. This was totally unacceptable for me as leader of the party and for my caucus. These meetings were attended by myself and colleagues in good faith. But I question the manner in which the meetings unfolded. For example, the proposal that we were given a time frame of 1 hour to review the proposal and come back with suggestions. Now, this is a proposal that would see a government stay in power, a minority government stay in power for a period of 2 years without official opposition. When we mentioned that these time frames were unrealistic, we were told, threatened, that if it had not been completed by the end of today, an election would be called. This was a negotiation of having a gun to your head. It's totally unacceptable. It will be the Premier's decision to call an election during this pandemic. I want to once again inform you that we have committed not to bring down this government during this time frame, guaranteeing the Premier that we would not have the government fall during 2020 out to March 31st, a time period of 7 months that remains.
Totally. How prepared are you to hit the ground running, though, at this point as a Liberal Party?
Our team had a caucus today. I have been the leader of the Liberal Party since April 24th of last year. I have never seen such a motivated, dedicated group of citizens, of colleagues, ready to go, anxious to go, should there be an election. But again, we are all hoping that Premier Higgs and his colleagues in Cabinet have the common sense and common decency not to have an election during a pandemic.
Are you going to try to do a deal with 2 other parties, or are you going to just let them go?
Well, that's a decision that I guess I have to make. I think the big disappointment is that, you know, we had some very meaningful discussions, at least with 2 other parties or 3 of us, on you know, changes that would really, or focus that would allow us to avoid the normal circles that we get into in the legislature, but make the legislature part of a path to success on a common focus. And you know, we had some brainstorming going on with ideas, and we were each putting them on the table and discussing them. And actually, at one point yesterday, I was really excited about where this was going and the potential, because I've said it, you know, over and over again, that for me it was how do we get direction for our province that gets tweaked, not thrown out. So it's very disappointing to be standing here at this point in time. I expected to be working most of the night and the weekend, and So now I'm thinking about next steps, because I think it's can we, what's it going to take to get some directional change in the province?
But with you and the Greens and the Alliance, you've got as stable a majority as Sean Graham had, and went for 4 years, as Brian Gallant had for 4 years. Why not do that if you need stability?
Well, in that scenario,
Fewer people that you have to negotiate with.
well, in that scenario, you had one party with the numbers, right? So you would have an alignment right off the start. When you're starting from, okay, we had a good path, working through a supply agreement. We had some good options in that draft, but everything becomes more difficult, because you're going to have one party that's going to spend their whole waking time trying to defeat all of us.
But
Because
with respect, if you've got two, why is that? Why can't you trust those two the way you trust all three?
the focus here was about getting alignment, because every discussion we would have outside of the political realm, for the most part, I mean, to the extent of any discussion, there was alignment. So the only separation, in many ways, sometimes it's just the politics. So you're going to have the opposition, spend every waking hour with the one sole strategy to take out the government and try to get back in government. Well, they don't have the votes today, but they would spend every waking hour trying, because there's no creativity. There's no involvement to try to help in a strategic way. The only strategy that I saw was, how do we take out the government? How do we get back in government? And all I was trying to achieve here, whether I'm involved in it or not, was a focus on a path that the province could start down in a way like it never had before, because it never had focus of purpose.
So do you plan to call an election in the next 48 hours?
So no, I don't plan to call an election in the next 48 hours. I am going to be thinking about this now over the weekend, about what the next step should be. But this has made the path forward, I guess, well, one could say clearer, one could say more difficult, but I think clearer.